Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session on careers in knowledge management. And also, we will learn about knowledge management at law firms, how it works. We will look at what's the best time to set up a knowledge management team for a small law firm uh, or a law practice. Okay, when you start to build your own team or your own litigation practice, at what point in time should you introduce knowledge management? We will also look at a little bit of client alerts and learning and development parts which are connected to knowledge management. We will see whether these are connected at all or not. And we have with us a specialist here, Mayukh Roy. He is also a part of one of our courses, and he's got about 5 or 6 years of experience, Mayukh, working at
Yeah.
knowledge management at Amarchand Mangaldas in Mumbai, which is now Cyril Amarchand, and he has worked at he has also worked at Talwar Thakur and Associates and DSK Legal in their knowledge management teams. So we're going to have a short introduction to from Mayukh about the kind of work he did, and then we will move into a conversational style where I will ask him some important questions that we all face as young lawyers. Yeah,
Thank you,
Mayukh, over to
Abhyuday.
you. It'll be great to know some of the challenges you worked on when you were at each of
Yeah.
these firms.
Thank you, Abhyuday. So, hello everybody. As Abhyuday mentioned, I have worked primarily in three law firms of different sizes. So, this was first was Amarchand Mangal. This is when Amarchand Mangal was before the split.
The
So, there
combined
were
firm.
about seven. The combined firm. I will come to why I am mentioning the size. So,
Okay.
Amarchand was then about roughly 700, 800 lawyers. Then I moved to DSK Legal, where when I was working there, they were about 120 to 25 odd lawyers. And then I worked with a TTA, that's Salva Thakur Associates, where there were roughly about 45 lawyers. Now, knowledge management for each of this law, needs of knowledge management are different. So let me start with Amarchand because that's where I started my career in the knowledge management field. So when I joined the KM team at Amarchand, uh, we were about three people, the strength in the Bombay office. The Delhi office had another three people. So in all, six people to look after the KM needs of roughly 700, 800 lawyers.
Okay.
Now there were primarily three kind of work that we would do. One was knowledge updates. So when I say updates here, it could be a rules notification, any passing of a new law, which would come out every day. On an everyday basis, we would be when I say we, I mean the KM team would be sending out updates to the entire firm. And sometimes if it's a specialized uh, area of law, let's say for example insurance, which is only the insurance team of uh, so that was number one. Number one was sending updates. Number two was actually first securing the documents. So when I say documents, I mean it could be plain, it could be legal opinion, or it could be any other documents which would be prepared by the lawyers of the firm. That would be stored in a repository. A repository. So it was the task of the KM team to ensure that every document which the firm works on is saved in a central repository. When I say central repository, it means a common place where any lawyer from the firm could access and get the information. So how it worked at Amarchand is that it became part of the so every month they were given a quota of so many documents that they had to submit to the KM team. Now our job there was to check, number one, first check that the documents that they were sending, whether already a similar document was present in the database. If yes, then we would send it back to the team, to the associate, saying that we already have a document. Sometimes we will suggest changes, that if you change it this way, then maybe you could submit it to us. That was one. So ensuring that the information in the central repository is always up to date.
So this is one
And
of the
number,
features of a knowledge management. This is a knowledge management objective, basically, that you want to have
yes. So
this thing, right? A central repository of work that's been done. Because the challenge that is faced is, if your associate leaves or your partner leaves, then what are the historical documents that your firm's central nervous system literally is left with? That
that is
depends
correct.
on basically the contribution made by various transactional lawyers and then certain edits or modifications by the knowledge management team. This is something that is possible. Now, various law firms implement versions of this or steps of it, and you can feel free to customize it in a way that you want to. But this is one of the ways it can be done. Yeah, Mayukh, please continue. I will just pause from time to time to sort of flag post the important issues that you specify. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, but mm, but before I go further, let me just briefly give a let's say, I won't say definition, but what exactly knowledge management means. In simple terms, it's connecting people to the knowledge needs of theirs. So whether the knowledge is tacit. Now, what does tacit means? Whether it's in your head or whether it's documented. So documents are the ones which I have already spoken. Now, what is tacit knowledge? So let's say if you're a transaction lawyer and if you've worked in PE deals for a very long time, there will be certain quirks on the
P is
PE deal
private
that
equity. Yeah.
is private equity. I'm sorry, let
No,
me
no, no
just
problem. Go ahead.
mention. So private equity deals, there will be some quirks or certain special things that you would understand, that this is how let's say, the industry functions. Now, it is the job of the knowledge management team to get them out. How do you get them out? One of the ways is writing. One of the ways is writing. Let's say, thought leadership. Thought leadership means writing articles. So what happens at hype readers is a thought leadership thing. So what you have in your mind, you are putting it down on paper, and that is your opinion that you're sharing. So sometimes it helps. How it helps, I'll tell you. If it's a very large organization, let's say team A has done a deal in a certain manner, which, let's say, needs some regulatory requirements. Now, they have gone through SEBI or whosoever is a regulator, and they have made a way out of getting all the approvals. If team B, which is sitting in, let's say, another city, because if it's a very bigger law firm, they would not know. They would, if it's a very similar looking deal, they would not know that a similar deal has been done, then they would reinvent the whole wheel. If you have a KM team, and if these learnings are shared in a common platform, then somebody can quickly go through the repository, check what's there, and if there is something on similar lines, they will save a lot of time. And thereby saving a lot of time, and that is would be helpful not only for the billing purposes but also for working in a faster manner. So, and linking it to, I will, as Abhyuday said, that is how the learning development L&D part comes into it. Somebody learned something, he wrote something that was saved on a central repository that was used by another team, another lawyer, and now that learning is shared throughout the law firm.
Okay,
Now,
so
for
this is
smaller
deal specific learning, right? Like transaction documents, maybe a legal opinion to get
yes,
briefed. So the
yes,
organic systems basically develop over time because you can benefit from work that was done earlier. And this is how things that were done by the law firm go into the system. Okay. Now the purpose is this, but my question is, what kind of a law firm? So two things. Okay, at what stage does a law firm need to have a KM function? Okay, and KM really doubles up sometimes for this thing you said, no, the blogs that are there. Now, how is that connected to KM? Is it connected to KM or should be separated? So this will be the second question. The first question is, what's the size of a law firm at which KM is needed? What's the smallest size maybe that you know of?
Well,
Yeah.
the smallest size that I know of where there is a KM, I won't say KM team, but there is a KM person, is roughly say 20, 25 lawyers.
Okay.
Now, it is my opinion that KM and L&D are kind of parallel to each other. They so if you have a proper documentation that can of your documentation of uh, all your deals that you have worked in. As I said, the smallest team that I know is 20-25 lawyers, but it is advisable that if you are a team of 5 and above, then you should have a not KM function. I am not saying you should have a KM team or you
Okay.
have a person dedicated only for KM, but you should have a KM function, because
Okay.
what that would entail is uh, learnings, actually saving documents in a systematic manner, any kind of document, so that
Okay.
retrieval of it is faster, quicker.
Hmm.
So that is uh, that is one part. Sometimes what happens is the blogs which are written uh, no, most of the times the blogs which are written, at least in India, are by lawyers, associates. Sometimes I would say blogs are of kind two type. Number one, they are providing you information. Number two, they are giving an opinion on any latest updates that has happened. Now, the information part is something which is not a learning in itself, but it is a good place to save all information. So if you are looking for information, it will be saved in one place, so searching becomes easier. That's number one. Number two, where blogs where you have given your opinion on a new legislation which has been passed by the legislature. There you are saying how this particular legislation will affect in a transaction. Now that is learning. Now sometimes what happens is a smaller, you may have one opinion, your colleague may have a separate opinion, but if you're in a very large law firm, typically what happens is there is a law firm opinion. So for these kind of scenarios, we will take this approach. Now,
Yeah, people
if
call
you
it like the firm view and all. It's called a view.
yes,
Yeah.
so I'm not naming them, it's firm view, sometimes it's like our take or something. But what
Right.
happens, I have seen it where the firm has on the same question of law, they have given two separate opinions which are completely diametrically opposite from each other.
Yeah.
So in order to avoid that, if you have a place where both of these opinions are written and read by the entire law firm, then um, it's easier for a law firm to come build an opinion, discuss about it. Essentially, it becomes a discussing forum, not only for the law firm, but also as a business decision. Let me just put it that way.
Okay, let's look
Yeah.
at Adarsh's question.
What kind of background of people who are part of the knowledge management team? So the concept of KM is relatively new in India, at least in law firms. However, the big four consulting firms like PwC and others, they have a very solid KM team, and which is very structured. Unlike some of the law firms here in India. So, mm, so they initially when people were hired, they were hired from these big four consulting companies. So they
That is
would
for a
have
systems
background.
approach, like to understand the system, to put the same model in.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So they would essentially have backgrounds in library science, information management, so on and so forth.
But do they insist on that kind of stuff now?
However, right now, because of technology, that requirement is not necessary because there are already a lot of options. When I say options, I mean technological options, and lawyers have become much more savvier now when it comes to technology also. So that is not required. What is now look essentially looked at people who have understanding of law. Number one, number two, who have some transactional experience. When I say some, it could be 0 to 3 uh, years of experience, 0 to 5. It varies from law firm to law firm. There is no fixed, but you should have some transactional experience just to understand how a transaction works.
Can a fresher looking for a job directly apply for the knowledge management team?
To my knowledge, I haven't seen that happen so far in any law firm. Um,
So the
but
person is usually hired for transactional work and then maybe reshuffled to KM at
that
some
is
point in
correct.
time. Okay.
And September, or sometimes what happens is that because I know a few law firms but where partners have transitioned into a KM role because they wanted a less
Less hectic schedules.
busy busy schedule. Yeah, that's correct. Less busy schedules, but that is not the norm. That is the exception. So, but what would actually help, and I think this is something, the skill set that is required for lawyers to work in KM teams are two: have an understanding of how a given technology works and how that will be effective in a law firm scenario. What I mean by that is you will have a lot of vendors will be coming to you, and to when I say I mean law firm saying we have this technology, you can use it for X. Now, as a lawyer, you need to understand uh, whether this technology will be useful in a in a legal law firm environment. Uh, so that is number one. Number two, you have to be good at, I would say, research, but when I say research, I mean that you should be able to categorize documents properly. When I say categorize, I mean tagging. Now, why I say tagging is because it is my experience that transaction lawyers are generally not good at saving documents in a proper manner. Typically, the moment a deal finishes, but I'm not saying it's their um, mistake. It's because they might be shuffling from one deal to another deal and they may not have the time to do. What happens is you end up shuffling information one another. So you should be knowledgeable about how to save similar documents together. Let's say bucket them. That is
Got it.
I would say a skill that
Just one
you
second.
should
I would like to pause
possess.
at the moment, Mayukh. So we
Yes.
want to identify, okay, there are a lot of people who are independent practitioners and a lot of them who are law students. So some of them require awareness of the function. I'm not exactly sure if people are immediately exercising this function right now. But what we are interested in knowing is that what kind of opportunities can exist for young lawyers to work in this area. Okay, and if there are lesser opportunities to directly work in this area, then when does a young lawyer need to set up a knowledge management team? And the second thing is that if we can imbibe the building blocks of what a KM person does beforehand, maybe we can individually stay updated and alerted on what the new trends are.
Okay, so there are
So
about three questions that you've asked.
yeah, I'm not asking
First,
you to answer right now. I'll break it down into more simpler questions so that we can go bit by bit. First question is
hmm,
that you already answered that law firms don't directly hire someone, at least in a junior position. Like a fresher is not hired for KM positions. Okay, so there may be a transactional
that is
lawyer
the
or an
case
external
until now.
person who moves in. Okay, and an
That
external
is correct.
person will also move in only if there's a new kind of system to be instilled in place which wasn't there. Otherwise, the person may find it difficult to sort of catch up with the practices and the history of the working of the law firm. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Then, is any part of knowledge management outsourced? In the sense, do our law firms hire independent consultants working externally to support them on knowledge management related projects?
Uh, there have been some experiments that I know of where they have kind of outsourced the work, but I don't know what the ultimate result is because they
Okay.
were kind of just developing the model, so to speak.
Okay.
But my personal opinion is that law firms typically should not outsource this work because it is their know-how, it is their information that they are sending it out to a third vendor. Yes, you can sign NDAs and others, but still it is your magic sauce, so to speak, that you are giving to a third party. So you should be wary of that.
Got it.
Uh,
Uh,
I I see
Manoj
Manoj
has
has
asked the
asked a
question.
question. If
What kind of softwares do KM teams use in their day-to-day job, and how is technology helping them?
okay, so there are some off the market KM softwares that are there. I am not going to name them. You
Aren't
can
they
search for
publicly
them,
available
but
to license them?
you can license them. I can share after the end of this session.
Okay.
I
No,
can
is there
share
anything
some
confidential
links.
about sharing names of a software?
No, not necessarily, but most of them are actually they are. What happens in India, at least, is that most law firms develop their own. So what they do is they get a software consultant to develop the software for them for their own requirements, needs, and then they customize it. So if I tell you the name of a software, that package as a whole generally is not that useful, or at least that's not the requirement of a law firm. When I am saying law firms, I'd say a minimum of 50 associates should be working in a law firm for a law firm to invest in a software. Anything below that, I think, is a waste of money because you can use tools like
Google
Google
Drive
Drive
and
and others.
SharePoint, you were saying.
Ah, yes, but SharePoint is also an investment unless you have a Office 365 license.
Okay, so like Google Drive, you can edit documents on the cloud and collaborate live. SharePoint is, I'm saying for the benefit of all our viewers, SharePoint is a similar software which Microsoft has developed where you can collaborate live on a Microsoft.doc document. Usually, when you work on a Word document, what happens is people send a flurry of emails, right? I'll fix my document, then I'll send you, then you'll send it. And when three, four of us are collaborating, four people cannot sit on a document together unless we go on video and do a screen share. So I have to edit it, then I'll give it to you, then you will edit it, and then there will be a whole versioning challenge and there will be an overflow of emails. So Google, something like a Google Drive, which is what we use for content management internally at LawSikho, that can allow parallel editing of a document by people at the same time. Documents are not lost, and Google uses its search engine technology to enable you to search documents better. You can organize them in folders. You can create even even workspaces over there, and it allows you to add tasks and comments for people. Now, why am I saying this? You might think this is obvious, but a lot of lawyers we work with and who want to work with us on content, they struggle sometimes to get onboarded onto Google Drive because they're not very familiar with it, and they have a big there's a stickiness to Microsoft Word, but the risks are that you cannot collaborate. frequently, it's subject to your computer crashing, and there are too many computer crashes that happen. Okay, when people are working on their own machines and there is no backup, so all of that can be avoided. Yes, you can work on a Microsoft Word document which is in a folder on your Dropbox, and the Dropbox can be synced to your PC. But even then, cloud collaboration is not possible in that situation too.
It is possible if you're using SharePoint,
Yeah, with
but
SharePoint it is
uh,
possible.
with SharePoint is possible, but the cost for actually having a SharePoint is far more than if you use a Google Drive. So,
Hmm.
so like I said, any organization which has less than 50 lawyers, I think, is a waste of money.
So they could use Google Drive, you're saying?
They could use Google Drive, however, it has to be properly
Organized.
organized.
Yeah,
Now, that is something, uh, there is no fixed rule book to follow that.
correct.
That is something that has to be customized according to the needs. Yes, there are certain things which are, to give you an example, there are certain things which could also be, if you are working on more than one practice areas, then you can organize documents based on practice areas.
Right.
Another thing that you can do is you can organize that with industry. If you're working with multiple industries, it helps that way. Or like earlier you used to have an in and out box, similarly you can have latest
Are there any other
documents in.
softwares you can name that are available to purchase as a
uh,
license?
the thing is, I do not recall the name right now,
Okay.
but uh, I, I can share them with you
Sure, sure.
after
You
the
can
end
let
of
me
this.
know. I'll get it shared in the groups where people are have
Yes,
got the
sure,
message of the session. Okay.
I will do
Now,
that.
okay. Now let's look at. So anybody has any questions? Others is asked. No, others' question is addressed. Manoj, is
How
your
is technology helping them? I think that answers Manoj's question, I
yeah,
suppose.
correct, correct. Okay. Now, what is the there's a connected function, which you said about client updates. Okay,
Yes.
and maybe so there are firms with less than 20, 50 lawyers who want to do client updates, and they may not want to do formal knowledge management as a team or as a individual. They may have a function and they may have a system like a meeting, monthly knowledge management meeting or weekly knowledge management meeting. Okay, but they may be still interested in a client alert feature just to show their clients that they are at the cutting edge of their niche.
Yes. Now, that is, to my mind, that becomes part of your business development initiative, because
Okay.
that is, but yes, at the back end is, it's a knowledge management KM function.
Hmm.
Now, for smaller law firms, how you could do that is, one way is actually, I would say, subscribing to a lot of wire services which are free. So let's say you can, but these are where you don't have to invest so much money, because there are others which you have to
You're
invest in a
explaining from
sizable.
the perspective of getting updates on regulatory developments.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And if you want to write, I mean, if you want to develop your own content to be shared with your clients, then one way of doing that, which I think works wonderfully in smaller organizations, is you can do that, let's say, a week wise, and circulating it among different lawyers. So let's say associate one does it for week one, associate two does it for the second week, third week, fourth week, so on and so forth. Now, yes, there is a time involved. Now there are two functions. One is you have to give information about whatever update you're giving. And second is which is the business, the BD function coming in, is that this is your take on the topic. Now, preferably, I would say keep it as small as possible, because if it's way too long, it is my experience that if your update is, let's say, 1 page long, then they will not read. However, if it's small and tiny bits, then it is much more easier for them to consume.
So we have a very so since we've been working on content a lot, right? So the past 8 years, so we have a very different approach to how knowledge management should be looked at. Law firms don't implement this right now, nor have we sort of evangelized it. But what we think is that clients would like to have a a mix of text, video, diagrams, and stuff. But usually, what you see in standard knowledge management or client updates is just dense text, concise, but presented in a it's not graphically presented. There are no videos. There are some law firms now which are making YouTube videos, but I don't know whether that's integrated in their knowledge management alerts. But if you can make a rich sort of client alert, which has multiple forms of
So
media, maybe
there is
another
one
downloadable
there
handout,
is one
etc. Yeah,
suggestion
go ahead, Mayukh.
there is one suggestion that is actually very interesting, which I feel a lot of lawyers could actually use. Smaller law firms
Yeah,
is, you can have a 1 day of the week, you can have a, let's say, knowledge session where 2 or 3 associates come and discuss on a topic. You can record that only audio format, and then with the help of software, you can have small tidbits, bite size, and share it with your client list. They can listen to it. Number one. Number two, if you want, you can add a small write up of maybe two words, maybe one paragraph saying this is what we have discussed and this is what you can listen to. So if they want, they'll understand what the information is. And number two, like I said, first part is what the information is, and number two is your discussion. That will be your
yeah.
value add. That's the
One
BD
thing,
part.
one thing I just want to point out here. Thanks, Mayukh, for sharing that. So when you are communicating with a client, you have to understand what is the way your client processes information in. Now, if you're in a big law firm, a lot of times your client will be a CFO or a global general counsel or a regional general counsel. That's the person who is actually your client. Okay, that person will understand dense text. But if you're a younger lawyer, sometimes you will be talking to the business guys directly. Okay, and not so apart from maybe a lawyer, a CS, uh, and maybe a consultant, people are not used to reading that much text as we write as lawyers. So if your client is not a lawyer, he will want very dirt simple granularity, simplification, ease of understanding, and it has to be conversational. And there should be some diagram, some color, something to sort of make it simple and processable. And also, a lot of knowledge management is, or client alerts is merely reporting of updates without, and the idea that is there behind that is that a client will ask us more questions about how this affects them, and then that will generate advisory work. But a lot of times you have to literally dumb it down for the client that this is how practice will change. These are the clauses that will need to be reviewed for a query to be generated, especially if you are talking to a if you're if you need to handhold your client. And at the initial stages, or especially when you're pitching to startup clients, SMEs, they will want that kind of handholding so that they know how a change impacts them and what will need to be reviewed. Literally, that much education is needed.